Hi guys, I wanted to talk today about resistance training. It's a topic I've covered before and I think it relates very closely to nutrition. I wanted to talk in particular about why people don't make the progress that they expect to make from a resistance training program. I wanted to break this into three different areas. Firstly, training intensity. Secondly, prioritization, and thirdly, the nutrition surrounding resistance training. Now, I'm a big advocate of resistance training. I think it's a very good form of exercise. I think it's one of the most balanced forms of exercise because you can increase your aerobic capacity through resistance training. You can also increase your strength. You can increase your bone mass. You can increase your flexibility. So in terms of overall health and overall improvements to your body composition, I think resistance training is one of the best forms of exercise. It's a very good all-rounder. I'm not a big fan of aerobic training for losing body fat. There's nothing wrong with aerobic training if you use that for your sport or you require an increased level of fitness. I don't think the scientific evidence supports long duration aerobic exercise as an effective way of losing body fat. So I just wanted to clear that up at the start. Resistance training is very useful, I think, however, when you do want to lose weight, because it does something that aerobic exercise doesn't do, and that is increases the resting metabolic rate because it increases the amount of skeletal muscle you have. One of the problems with people who want to lose weight is that they've often tried to lose weight before, and that has caused them to lose a lot of their skeletal muscle. So addressing that problem by rebuilding your skeletal muscle through a resistance training program is a very effective way of increasing increasing the likelihood that you'll lose body fat and then keep it off as well. So and if you've watched my videos, you've watched other people's videos, you've done some research, you may decide to do a resistance training program. A lot of people who do that actually don't make as much progress as perhaps they should. So I wanted to address three possible areas where you can fall down and not actually achieve your goals in resistance training. The first one is training intensity, and I see this in the gym. I've seen it for many years in the gym. Those people that make the greatest gains, the most progress in the gym, are those people that train with the most intensity. What is intensity? Well, it's not how hard you train, it's how heavy you train. In resistance training, intensity is really defined by the closeness to your 1 repetition max, which means that you have to lift heavy weights. Now, it's very important in resistance training to lift heavy weights because it has a stimulating effect on both the muscular system and the neuronal system, and this is what leads to the adaptation that then allows your muscle to grow in size. It's not quite the same with aerobic training. You can train aerobically within your comfortable pace, which is quite a low heart rate, which is really not much faster than kind of very fast walking, slow jogging. You can actually run at that intensity and still make very good gains to your cardiovascular system. Your cardiovascular system will improve. If you try that low intensity approach in resistance training, it tends to lead to stagnation, and you don't stimulate the neuronal and the skeletal muscle systems in order to force them to adapt. So it's very important to lift heavy weights. You don't have to lift heavy weights all the time. You can alternate. Obviously there are certain sessions where you might not be able to lift heavy weights for particular reasons. But generally, if you don't lift heavy weights at high intensity, if you don't train at high intensity, I believe that you won't make as much progress as if you were lifting heavier. So that's my first your criticism of some people's resistance training programs. They think that because they're a neophyte and they haven't trained before, that they can only lift very light weights, and this is relative. Obviously, someone that's a seasoned lifter will be able to lift in comparison much heavier weights, but you need to lift weights that are intense for your own physique. Obviously you have to warm up, and obviously you have to build yourself into a program. You don't just go straight into the gym and lift heavy weights, but your ultimate goal in resistance training should be to go in and try and beat your previous lifts. And those types of people that have a competitive element to their own training, who want to always lift more weight, who want to always try and lift more weight, those are the people I see making the most progress. Those people that go in with the same routine, that lift the same weights week in week out, they're the people that generally have the same physique year after year. Now, I don't want to get into the rep ranges or how many reps you should do, but really you should be lifting so that you get close or to failure. You don't have to lift to failure every single time you go in the gym, but you do have to get close to failure, and you want to be lifting weights that you can't perform more than about 12 reps with. If you stick to those guidelines and you train with a reasonable intensity, you should make gains, and your body composition should improve because you'll build skeletal muscle. So that's some area. So that's something to look at if you feel that you've stagnated in in your terms of improving your body composition and you're not losing the weight perhaps you thought. Maybe you've not stimulated enough skeletal muscle growth. Maybe your resting metabolic rate's not high enough, and there's something to look at if you're performing resistance training. The second problem I see with many people who perform resistance training is they don't prioritize their training. Again, those people in the gym that make the most progress are those people that put their training first. And I know all that's not always possible. If you have a family, if you have a job, you do have to, it's very difficult sometimes to prioritize your training. But if you think of your training as the seventh thing on your list in things to do in the day, you're not going to make great progress. The training, if you want to make the best progress, it should be number one. You should go to the gym fresh, lots of energy, and you should have your mind set on improving your lifts from the previous time. You should have your mindset in the growth intensity area, and you need to really concentrate on what you're doing. If your mind is elsewhere, if you're tired, if you've just done a day's work and you're only going to the gym to go through the motions, you won't make good progress in the gym. You won't build solid skeletal muscle. You won't build a core foundation of a strong muscular frame. So you really do have to prioritize your training. Personally, I like to train first thing in the morning before I do anything else. That way I can concentrate on what I'm doing. Get up at a time when I know I've got enough time for training, so I don't have to fit anything else in. And it also allows you to focus because you generally haven't started thinking about other things. And although it takes I know some people don't like training first thing in the morning, but I've personally, for some people, I feel it's a better way of doing it, just simply because if I tried to train after I'd been to work, it would be late, I'd be tired, and then obviously it would be very difficult to get adequate nutrition in after you've trained in the evening. So I'm not going to, I don't like to dictate to people how they should train and when they should train, but really you should be prioritizing your training such that you have good energy levels and that your mind is focused purely on your training so that you can make the best gains you can. If your mind's elsewhere, if your energy levels are low, you're never going to make good progress. If you're in that mindset and you're going to the gym, let's say you do prioritize your training, I believe it's actually better not to go to the gym when you've got low energy levels and your mind is elsewhere than it is to go and go through the motions. If you're in that mindset, if you're tired, if you don't have the energy levels, if you're worried of stressing about something else, my personal opinion is you shouldn't be in the gym. You should only go to the gym when you're going to go in with the belief that you're going to lift to a high intensity and to try and beat your previous lifts, such that you're putting some effort into what you're doing. Now, you don't have to lift like in a competition every time you go in the gym, but really you should be trying to make progress each time you go in something. You'll be doing different lifts, you'll be doing different exercises. There should be some element of trying to push yourself a little bit further every time you go. So prioritizing your training and training to intensity is very important. Now, supposing you're doing that, if you don't have good nutrition, you're still not going to make good progress. It's been shown time and time again in studies that those people that increase their protein intake when they perform resistance training build much more skeletal muscle. I wouldn't want to count the papers, but there are dozens, maybe hundreds, I don't know. There's a lot of papers that have looked at protein intake with training, and time and again, whether it be children, whether it be adults, whether it be women, whether it be men, whether it be the elderly, whether it be the young. Those people with the highest protein intake up to a certain level are those people that get the most out of a resistance training program. And this is another mistake I see. People perform resistance training in order to improve their body composition, and they don't have enough protein in their diet. There is controversy about how much protein you need, but I've always gone by the general formula that you need about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body weight. So if you're a typical man, you're going to need somewhere between 160 to 200 grams of protein a day, depending on how muscular you are, and depending on how tall you are. You're going to need somewhere in that range. It's going to be slightly less for women because they tend to have less muscle and they tend to have higher body fat levels, and they tend to be shorter, so their overall requirement is less. But that's somewhere in the ballpark. You can work it out for yourself. If you're overweight, you're going to have somewhere around 25% body fat maybe. If you're lean, you're going to have maybe 15% body fat. Somewhere around that. So you can take your weight, you can take the percentage of body fat you have off that weight, and you can work out your lean muscle mass, your lean mass, which is your total weight minus your fat weight, and you can then work out just that figure is then converted into grams for the amount of protein that you have. Now, I'm not really one of these people that dictates how you need to take your protein. There are better quality proteins than others, but for the average person, if you're not an elite athlete, if you're not training very, very frequently, daily, twice a day, like a very professional athlete would, as long as you're taking in high quality proteins from good food sources, I don't think it matters really where you get your protein from. You could take a whey protein supplement if you couldn't get enough protein in your diet. That's a very good way of increasing your protein intake. But meat, fish, the type of meat you eat, even if you get some of your protein from vegetables, I don't think it matters. As long as your total protein intake has a balance of amino acids, it's reasonably high in the branched chain amino acids, which most meat, eggs, milk, and whey protein supplements will be. It needs to be reasonably high in branched chain amino acids, particularly valine, which appears to be the amino acid that stimulates muscle growth the most. It needs to be, and I don't think of the proteins, I don't think it matters too much which you use. I find personally what works very well is just to eat a normal, reasonably a normal high quality diet, reasonably high in protein, and supplement the extra protein you need with a whey protein supplement. That seems to be a very efficient way for me to get the protein that I require. It means I don't have to think too much about how much protein I have in my diet, because I know there's a constant baseline amount of protein, and then depending on how hard I train during the week, I will alter the amount of whey protein I have as a supplement in order to be able to provide the extra nitrogen that I need for that training. And that also works very well if you think you're going to become ill. It helps your immune system if you increase your whey protein. That can actually sometimes, if you think there's a lot of colds about, increase your protein intake, and that can actually stop you, sometimes I think getting a cold. There's a good body of evidence that suggests that if you're in a negative nitrogen balance, your immune system becomes slightly less efficient, and therefore you're more likely to pick up an infection. So keeping your protein content high is good, particularly at this time of year when there are colds going around as well. So there's three areas that I think people possibly need to think about the basics when they're doing resistance training. And in terms of nutrition as well, obviously you do have to have enough energy. If you're trying to lose weight and you're on a low calorie diet and you're also on a low protein diet, you have very little chance of putting much skeletal muscle on. You really need to be in a positive nitrogen balance. You need to have more, you need to have a high intakes of protein to provide nitrogen, and if you want to build a lot of skeletal muscle, really you need to be in a positive energy balance as well. I do believe you can build some skeletal muscle with a negative energy balance. there is evidence that that is possible. It's very controversial, but it is. I think there is some evidence that that is actually possible. It won't be very much, and how that works, I'm not entirely sure. I've looked into it before, and I think some of those people that do appear to have negative energy balances do when they perform resistance training, there is some stimulation of skeletal muscle and production of skeletal muscle. It might be about moving energy from one compartment to another, so the body may be able to do that. But generally, to be able to put lots of quality muscle on, build a good strong core, a good foundation, you do generally need to be in a situation where you're in a positive energy balance and a positive nitrogen balance, which means that you're consuming more protein than you're breaking down from your skeletal muscle. So that's something else to bear in mind, which means that obviously you can't, there's not really much point performing resistance training to build skeletal muscle if you're also on a very low calorie diet, which I don't think is a good idea anyway. I don't advocate low calorie or very low calorie diets. I don't think I think people should concentrate more on the quality of the foods that they eat rather than the amount that they eat. If they eat high quality foods, if it's high in protein, and if you're training hard, your body composition will improve, your body fat levels will go down, your skeletal muscle will go up anyway. So think of those three things when you're training. If you're not making the progress you think you want to build skeletal muscle, improve your body composition. Think about the intensity of your training. Are you really training hard enough? Are you really lifting heavy enough weights? Are you really pushing yourself? Secondly, are you prioritizing your training? Are you doing it when you're fresh, when you've got lots of energy, when your mind is on your training, or are you just fitting it in, as something you do at the end of the day? Thirdly, is your nutrition in a correct state to be able to allow you to build skeletal muscle? If you have enough protein, particularly in your diet, and if you don't, you need to address that by increasing the food intake of protein, or by supplementing with something like a whey protein. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that's given you some guidance on where you may go if you feel that you've stagnated a bit in terms of improving your body composition. Remember to eat well, stay healthy, and protect yourself, and I will see you soon for another video. Take care.